Hello and welcome to today's episode of Daily Current Affairs with Sathya sir. This is me, Satyanarayan from IQ Ideas, and I bring you important current affairs news updates from a daily newspaper, interesting articles that you can read for reading comprehension, and of course, point out words of vocabulary that will help you improve your English language. Today is the 28th of August 2025. And without further ado, let's jump into the news headlines for today. Of course, the biggest news is the tariffs, the US tariffs, which have been imposed on India. But hours after the 50% tariffs hit, both Delhi and Washington, D.C., that is India and the US, say that channels are open for talks. On one hand, you impose tariff, and after imposing the tariff, you tell us, but we can talk about this. Let's see what it is. So the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he said, the Indians came in very early after Liberation Day when Trump first announced reciprocal tariffs to start negotiating on tariffs, and we still don't have a deal. And in another quote, I thought India could be one of the earlier deals, and they kind of tapped us along in terms of negotiations. And then there is also the aspect of the Russian crude purchases, which they have been profiteering on. So there are many levels going on here. What do we say to this? The government officials here said that India and US have a long-term relationship and both will seek to resolve their differences. Both sides have concerns on how this will play out, and both sides are looking to resolve them. Communication channels are open. In fact, they have said that European countries should also take US type action against India and has expressed frustration over them continuing to source petrol, diesel, and aviation fuel, suggesting that a resolution may not be on the cards. But our government does not seem to be in a mood to relent. As these penalties came into force, senior government functionaries maintained that there was no need to panic and the claims regarding the impact of the tariffs imposed by Trump may be exaggerated. So it's all a game of wait and watch. Let us see if things change in the near future, in the distant future. But as of now, the tariffs are there. Okay. And very interesting update is two new Supreme Court judges to take oath as center notifies the appointments. So it says that within 48 hours of the Supreme Court Collegium recommending the elevation of Justices Alok Aradhe and Vipul Manubhai Pancholi, Chief Justices of the Bombay and Patna High Courts respectively, to the Apex Court, the President on Wednesday issued warrants of their appointments and they're scheduled to take oath as the Supreme Court judges on Thursday. In the article, there are also a couple of interesting indicators. One is that Justice B.V. Nagaratna will be the first woman CJI of India when she will be holding the top post for 37 days. And of course, Justice Pancholi, whose appointment was opposed by Justice B.V. Nagaratna, is scheduled to be the next CJI in 2031 after the retirement of Justice Joymalia Bagchi. So let us see. India will be having our first female Chief Justice, although the tenure will be just for 37 days. All right. We also have another small article, but nevertheless an interesting one, which is that the cabinet nod to bid for the Commonwealth Games 2030 in Ahmedabad. So the city of Ahmedabad is now in line to bid for the Commonwealth Games to be held in 2030. As we would be following the news, if you have followed the news in the past 1 month, there were also reports of India's bid for hosting the Olympic Games. So this should be a precursor to that. Great. We move on. The city page does not have any major national relevant news. The state page also does not seem to have anything great of importance. When we go to the nation page, there seems to be an interesting article, so I'm going to read that. Folding the paper is tough. Okay. So this is a very interesting update which says that India to start tests for a Desi iron dome from next year. Now, Iron Dome was a lot in the news as the it is the name given to the shield over a country. Israel made it famous. Trump has been in talks for the Golden Dome. So India will next year begin testing new interceptor missiles for an indigenous, that is locally developed air and missile defense shield under Project Kusha, which will be a critical element of the ambitious mission Sudarshan Chakra, as announced by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, to provide security cover to strategic as well as vital civilian areas in the country by 2035. Now, based on that, we have a very uh, great word, indigenous. Anything which is locally developed in the country is known as indigenous to the country, or anything which is local, right? Even indigenous tribes. So, tribes which are of that place are indigenous tribes. So the word indigenous, very famous. Okay. There is a article below that, which is from the Lancet Journal, which says dependence on AI may de-skill doctors. Uh, what does that mean? It is well known that AI, artificial intelligence used in medicine, can improve diagnosis and disease management. But a new study published in Lancet Gastroenterology and Hepatology has raised concerns of a potential flip. The risk of de-skilling of clinicians due to the constant exposure to decision support systems such as artificial intelligence. As a teacher, I have been seeing this happening in education. Students are so reliant on artificial intelligence things like chat gpt that they get entire answers to questions and essays generated without giving it any critical thought. This, of course, is a matter of grave concern because school assignments, college assignments are supposed to be things which help you improve your skills, your reading skills, your writing skills. And if you solely depend on artificial intelligence tools just to generate those answers without even giving it a thought, then you definitely are not going to learn anything. And further, if in the real world, especially for something as sensitive as medicine, if there is too much of dependence on artificial intelligence and doctors, clinicians, diagnosticians lose that human touch, then matter of grave concern. Now, yes, artificial intelligence can make life easy, but can it replace human skill? No. Okay. Now there is a great infographic below which says how Trump tariffs will hit India Inc. company by company. So, in its first of its kind assessment, this newspaper maps how US President Trump's latest tariff salvo may impact companies across 13 sectors. So, an interesting word is the word salvo, right? So, salvo is a huge barrage of missiles. When you fire many missiles together, that's called a salvo. So, from pharma to phones, an exclusive breakdown of the top 5 exporters in each category. Uh, the things covered here include garments, rice, Vaname shrimp, made ups, home textiles, gold and silver jewelry, carpets, machinery and parts, auto parts, cut and polished diamonds, solar panels, petrochemicals, smartphones, medicines for retail sales, and so on. It gives you the exports amount in $1 billion, the manufacturing tariff percentage, the new tariffs, top exporters, major producing regions, and an outlook. Very, very interesting. The next nation page is an interview with the opposition's vice president candidate Sudarshan Reddy. So, as we know, after the resignation of India's vice president Jagdeep Dhankar, the elections are going to take place in September, with both the current party, the party in power, and the opposition having launched their own candidates. So, the opposition's vice president candidate is Sudarshan Reddy. Now, there is a very interesting, it's an interview with him where the opposition vice president candidate Reddy says democracy is threatened not only by governments but also by citizens on the basis of religion, caste, language, and region. So, excerpts from that interview are given. I would very strongly suggest you read it. A statement by the RSS chief that trade must be voluntary and without pressure. Great. We come quickly to the middle page where the first major column is by R. Jagannathan. Will politics get Trump tariffed? High US duties will worsen an already existing jobs crunch. With Bihar polls soon and big state polls next year, there is a political aspect to this. But Modi has enough political capital to execute key reforms that will create more jobs. So, this seems to be an interesting take by somebody who should be an expert in this field about how exactly the Trump tariffs are going to affect politics in India. Below that, we have an article by Harshvardhan Shringla. Group Captain Shukla's flight was historic on many counts. So, this is a reference to Sudhanshu Shukla, India's second person in space, first Indian aboard the International Space Station. He was part of a mission of 4 members aboard the Axiom 4 who went to the International Space Station. So, this column by a Rajya Sabha member and ex-foreign secretary is about what an Indian aboard ISS means for India's space ambitions as well as diplomacy. 3 columns to the left, one is Swadeshi Diwali. Tariffs have clouded festival season for workers in export hubs. How the rest of us can help. Another column on time to evolve, a pun on electric vehicles. India can become a global e-vehicle hub with the right incentives and mastery over batteries. And then a humor column by Bachi Karkaria Erratica. Why English is so right-wing, left in language. Okay. On the next page, we have an interesting article. Now, you would know that Jaipur is known as the Pink City on account of pink being the major color of many buildings. So, UNESCO's World Heritage Site status for Jaipur, a global badge of honor, now teeters on the edge. To teeter is when you're on the edge and you're about to lose your balance, right? So, to teeter is to be on the edge of something and to be losing balance. So, UNESCO's World Heritage Site status for Jaipur, a global badge of honor, now teeters on the edge, threatened by encroachment, neglect, and bureaucratic inertia. How 50 Shades of Pink threatened to rob Jaipur of heritage tag. 50 Shades of Pink is, of course, a reference to that infamous book 50 Shades of Grey, erotic literature. Okay. When we move ahead, we have a nation page where we have yet another article on how the tariffs are how the tariffs are landing a blow on garment exporters. Prime Minister Modi's call to be vocal for local and for made in India. The business page talks about the government is to demand concessions on carbon tax in EU trade deal, fewer jobs in advertising with artificial intelligence, and interesting other news. The global page, of course, the floods which were on the Tawi River. Based on that, Israel says evacuation of Gaza City inevitable. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine. US citizenship issues, and so on. In the sports page, we have the US Open, the major tennis event coming up. So, it is, I think, going on. So, we have, just as cricket was the center of news when the India-England test series was on, now a lot of news are devoted to tennis with the US Open, one of the 4 Grand Slams. And then, of course, things related to cricket and Neeraj Chopra's javelin achievements. And the last page with a few interesting articles for sports. So that brings us pretty much to an end of today's session. The biggest thing in news, of course, was the US tariffs on India, India's response to that. Infographic on the various sectors hit. Then the notification of the 2 new judges on the Supreme Court bench. India's bid for the 2030 Commonwealth Games, with Ahmedabad being the host city, and of course an interview with the opposition's vice presidential candidate Sri Sudarshan Reddy. Those were most of the news headlines from today. If you have liked this episode, hit that like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. This is Sathya wishing you all the very best and have a good day.